Mike's up, ladies and gentlemen. Lady and gentlemen.
You first. First Bank. You first.
Like,
Good morning. Good morning once again. You're welcome to Smooth 98.1. My name is Lakumi and I'm your host. We're here for Freshlypressed981. This is the segment where we analyze, go in depth on all the top Nigerian stories, national stories. And with me in the studio are Mr. C. Mr.
good.
C, hi.
Hi, Lakumi. Good
And
morning.
Oyeyemi.
Morning, Lakme. Good morning, Lagos.
Good morning. It is good to have both of you here. They're going to be helping us with some of the stories that we have. I already told you from the beginning of the show today that these guys don't play with their history, they don't play with their data, they don't play with facts. They're going to give it to us as it is, right? And are you ready for it? To join the conversation, it is 0809 444 I'll take it again. 0809 444 Please know that we are also streaming on YouTube. You can catch the show, see the faces of our lovely analysts on YouTube as they analyze their stories. So, gentleman and lady, let's get into it, shall we? First story that we have today: FG restricts airlines from UK, Canada, Saudi Arabia, and this is supposed to take effect from Tuesday, December 14th, right? Okay, so Seriki, that's Adi Seriki, Captain Adi Seriki, that's the Minister of Aviation. So he announced the decision on Sunday in Lagos and explained that it is supposed to be them reciprocating the restriction that Nigeria has received from these countries. And this is me, I think, quoting him. The minister noted that if those countries place Nigeria on a red list, they lack a moral right to have their airlines fly into Nigeria on commercial operations. What do you think, Mr. C?
Okay, thank you, Lakumi. So, for me, this is just reactionary moves from the Nigerian government. Now, these governments have placed Nigeria on a red list. And the question a lot of listeners will probably be asking this morning is why is Nigeria on the red list, considering the fact that countries like China, countries like the US, who have more COVID cases, who have more COVID fatalities, are not on the red list? Now, there's no clear cut answer, but we can proffer a number of reasons. One, only 1.7% of the total eligible population that should be vaccinated has actually been vaccinated. In Lagos State, only 1.9 million people have received doses of the COVID vaccine virus. And we all know that in Lagos, the eligible population is at least 10 million. Now, why that is the case, we have no idea. And these countries are probably cautious that the Nigerian government appears not to be doing enough with regards to combating the spread of COVID 19 and all its variants, and also ensuring that a sizable number of its population is vaccinated. But beyond all of this, especially with regards to the UAE angle, there's some backstory to that. So there's been this back and forth between Peace Airlines and the General Civil Aviation Authority of the UAE
Yeah.
with regards to the operations of Peace Airlines at the Sharjah airport.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the UAE authorities claim that Peace Airlines was given operational slots at Sharjah. They stopped using Sharjah, moved to another airport in Dubai, and then returned to
Trying to
Sharjah.
return, yes.
And they claim that Sharjah is overutilized at 140% of its capacity.
Mm.
Now, Peace Airline expectedly has denied this version of events and says no, they only stopped because of the COVID restrictions. Now, the Nigerian government has now introduced reciprocal moves. Now, yes, with respect to the reciprocal moves by the Nigerian government, it's in order. Because if the US, the UK government, and the UAE authorities say, and the Canadian authorities suggest that Nigerians cannot fly directly from Nigeria to their countries, right? Because they fear that the virus will be
Yeah,
exported to them.
it's right.
What exactly is the basis for flying people here? Because we're also concerned. You can't be the only people concerned about the spread of this vaccine.
Yeah.
And casting doubt on the authenticity of the test carried out here is just below the belt because you can actually test negative here. You can actually take your shots here and be infected on the planes they bring here to take you to their countries. So, whilst we continue to note that no one is yet to have been reported dead from the Omicron variant,
Yeah.
it just goes, all of this just goes to underline how weak Nigeria has become in the international community of nations and how we are no longer taken seriously because of the joke that our leaders continue to inflict upon this country. If Nigeria was an economic powerhouse in the same league, in the same category with China and the US, would Nigeria be placed on the red list? I'm almost certain it would not happen. And bigger question, what exactly is Nigeria's policy, foreign policy? How does Nigeria protect itself from moves like this that dent its image? Ghana is not on the red list. Egypt, I don't believe Egypt is on the red list. What is our government doing about this? Do they even understand the deeper ramifications of all of this? They cannot honestly expect people like me to come and proffer solutions to them on air.
Okay.
They're paid to do their jobs and they should seriously do those jobs.
Thank you, Mr. C. Remember that you can join the conversation via YouTube because we're streaming there. You can actually send your messages there as well. I'll be taking your messages. Send your messages to WhatsApp 0809 444 Or getting, Yemi, let's talk about COVID-19 because I mean, Mr. C already started on that train. So let's move to this story that says COVID again, Lagos top chart as Nigeria records 612 new infections. That's over the weekend. And, this story actually tells us that Lagos has confirmed more cases from last week. About 1,500 cases was recorded just within 3 days. So what do you have to say about
Well,
this?
I mean, the numbers are clearly increasing, and we're almost at this the numbers we're recording when we had that compulsion to have the lockdown, right? So
yes.
we are in red zone, literally. The concern that I have is we cannot afford those kind of stringent measures
Yes.
at this point.
Okay.
Because for us, COVID is not just a health protective measure. COVID sanctions or limitations are not just health measures. They could have economic implications and serious ones, right? So there definitely needs to be a very intelligent handling of it. First, we need to move, there were stories reporting issues around the quality of our tests. We need to ensure that that's taken out of the question. If we're reporting 612 people or 619 people or 1,000 something people, it is indeed right. And we know what it is. Okay, is it Delta variant? Is it Omicron? Because that's how detailed we need to be at this point. Got, I mean, it's a collaboration between government and people. I would say that I have seen generally. A lot of people are talking dirty December already, and they're saying dirty December without necessarily thinking about continuing to apply all these non-medical protective measures. But government has stepped in. I hear tests are now required. All concerts or events that are supposed to be held this December are supposed to be registered with the Lagos State government. There's a safety portal that they have for that. And then people who are in attendance are to present either a negative PCR test or be ready to take rapid antigen tests at the center or at the event. I don't know how effective this would be because when I see us coordinate certain other things, I mean, we had a report just a few weeks or a few days ago about 48 test lab centers not reporting for 6 weeks and nobody raised an eyebrow. So how are we sure that even this measure, which I think is reasonable, it's reasonable because the way this kind of events are, there's a lot of human interaction and they're super spreader events. So, but I just hope that people, I would lend my voice generally to the call for people to just be of good cheer and take good take good measures to protect themselves, because
Mm.
the way we all react to COVID is different, but it's still an African problem.
So let
Okay.
me jump in
One
quickly,
second, Mr. C.
very quickly. So
Yeah.
two things, yeah. One is Dirty December has already started. That's one. Two.
Yeah.
Now, what are the like Oyemi said? What
Yeah.
are the practical realities of checking for these details,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that most Nigerians do never show up early for shows? They will all show up at the same time, and the organizers want to get the
Overwhelmed.
event
Yeah.
over and done with quickly.
Mm.
Who's going to ensure that this is the proper things?
They usually have, for example, Lagos State, they usually have Lagos State officials at most of these
Do we have
events.
enough manpower?
So
Question
that's
mark.
another question to
So,
ask.
Lakumi, if 10,000 people show up at the same time, now ready, so purportedly showing the details, how many people are available to check them?
This is also us hoping that nobody's bribing anybody at
Right.
those events, right?
I didn't even go there.
Okay, let's move on to the next story. JJ says, I wonder why the reason for the flight restrictions from the UK is because we have been restricted as well. Can we have more thought through reason? Nigeria, my country, he says. NDLEA arrests drug couriers. They seize 1 million tramadol capsules and other substances. Now, there's a particular young man that was arrested on, I think, December 10th on Lagos Benin Expressway. That's a 43-year-old Onuaha Friday. That's what the NDLA spokesperson said. Babafemi, Femi. That's his name.
Thank you, Lakumi.
Mr. C, are we worried? We are definitely worried.
So, first of all, a 43-year-old man cannot be young.
Young.
He's
Okay.
young.
Okay, so but seriously, but beyond all of this, Nigeria is in the midst of a severe drug crisis, and we haven't woken up to that reality. 1 million tramadol capsules, they were going to be sold to people. For someone to import, make, produce, or obtain by whatever means 1 million capsules of tramadol tablets, that means there is a market, there is a demand for it. And you will continue to record all the seizures. Beyond that seizure, there was another seizure on the 3rd of December, and a truck conveying illicit drugs all the way to Onitsha was arrested at the bridgehead. Now, the NDLA, kudos to them. Since the new chairman came in, they've ramped up their investigations and arrests. But you're only looking at the symptoms. What is the cause of this drug crisis? One is a general frustration.
Yeah.
Two, peer pressure, misguided peer pressure. People are falling into wrong habits. And then guess what? The people who peddle these dangerous drugs sell them for free or give them for free initially to get them hooked. And once they're hooked, they resort to a life of crime to sustain, to feed the habit.
Is that true?
Yes. Once you get hooked on drugs,
I'm talking about selling them for free. So this
No,
is
initially-
this means it's an intentional move
So-
to
this is
Yeah.
how it starts. They get you hooked on free, first of all,
okay, so they can make sales. Yes.
as an avenue to escape the reality, the absurdity called Nigeria. So you latch onto it. And over time, it appears to work. When you're hooked, it's no longer free. You now
Yeah.
have to pay for it. But with everything Nigerian, your purchasing power continues to reduce every hour, every minute. When you can no longer fund it legitimately, you resort to crime to fund it. And that would explain to a certain extent why the rise of criminal activities has continued. Some Boko Haram camps that were raided in the past, they found condoms and tramadol capsules. So beyond all of this, we need to go back to the schools because that's where it's from. Continue to educate the youth on the dangers of drug abuse.
Okay.
And then point out to them that despite the difficulty called Nigeria, there's still a better way of dealing with it. The churches, through the religious organizations, the religious bodies have to step in. And then we need to ramp up the provision of drug treatment facilities because a lot of people do not have access to drug treatment
treatments, yes.
facilities. Oh, yeah, me.
But there's the NDLEA, right? There's the NDLEA. And if I recall, in the last 6 months, what has been the most topical point that the NDLEA has raised? The fact that people who are getting married have to do medical tests for drug whatever drug abuse, right?
Yes.
Is that the most critical issue apart from
There
this
are other,
tramadol?
there are, however, other news stories
No,
on,
no, I
yes,
know. I'm
okay.
just saying, as in, if we say what is in the consciousness of what was the media used the most for, right? There has to be an intentional campaign as well. As the reports are coming, the NDLA must be screaming. A regulator has to deploy both informal and formal means to tackle this kind of problems because is a socialization
Yes.
that causes these things. So the NDLA can be this quiet when
Mm.
you have there's crystal meth infestation, tramadol infestation, all sorts of things, right? So they need to be as loud as the noise that is being made by it. I don't see or feel them, you know, acting as hard as they should
Okay.
on these things.
So,
Convictions need to increase, all of those things. There
okay.
just needs to be a response.
Thank you so much. We're hoping also that, I mean, as they continue to uncover some of these things, they're able to actually get questions answered by these guys that they are arresting. So, for
Yeah.
example, this particular old man that Mr. C has. All right. It kind of says, in addition, while it may sound good that the FG is reciprocating to UK and Canada ban, we should evaluate the impact it would have on the FX inflow we would have had on our economy. That's UK. Let's take just one message. Good morning. It says Ngozi says with respect to Nigeria being on the red list, I understand that the Omicron cases that were traced to Nigeria, the so-called people had fake vaccination cards. What's the real story? He says. Okay, let's move to Nigeria. Burkina Faso signed MOU on tackling human trafficking. Oh yeah, me. Let's just get into this story because of
Well,
time.
I think it's a good move. We need more of this. The indices for human trafficking, sex trafficking, despite COVID, are still very high. Luckily, the report is that we have done better.
Mm.
We have done better in terms. There have been more convictions. There have been more interceptions of these activities. We need to collaborate more, with all our neighbors, especially down the Sahel, because apart from just as a consequence of all of the terrorism, there's also that, there's trafficking has increased because you can easily disguise all of this movement. So I think it's a great move. I know we've done one with Niger, now with Burkina Faso. I hope it does help to curb, the spread of sex trafficking and human trafficking in Africa. But
Okay.
at least NACTIP is doing a great job. Should applaud them.
All right then. Okay, next story. Gas price may skyrocket as government hits importers with 27 billion tax. So the current energy crisis in the country would worsen in the coming weeks as the federal government returned taxes on imported liquefied petroleum gas, that's LPG, amid soaring pump price, as well as the projected removal of subsidy on premium motor spirit next year. Mr. C.
Okay, thank you, Lakumi. This story is just a brilliant example of the absurdity and the joke Nigeria is today. You have
Mr.
federal government agencies not talking to themselves. You have the federal government talking at cross purposes. It says one thing and does another thing. So here's what the story is about. We've had four major firms importing liquefied petroleum gas
Okay.
into Nigeria since 2019. Now, the way our market is structured, 40% is produced, 40% of the nation's total demand for liquefied petroleum gas or cooking gas is done locally. 60% has to be imported. Now, they've been importing since 2019. At the point they were importing, there were no tax or duty notes. Then in 2021, a few days to the end of the year, Customs Service wakes up and sends them duty notices. Now, the first question is, I need to confirm specifically, but I have my doubts that they can even legally send those retroactively. That's the first step. Now, the federal
Oh, yeah,
government,
me. Kade, were you paying attention?
Well, 6 years, the FG can backtrack if they can audit and then backtrack for a period of 6 years when it comes to tax. But there are certain things that are out of scope, and they need to engage. I don't think that you would just, it's even, I mean, let Mr. Steve wrap up on his thought line, but
Yes.
that you can go back on taxes and review for
Okay.
that period.
So
Proceed.
I didn't speak with certainty, but I have my doubts. Now, we have a gas expansion program, which is financed by the central bank, and it's to the sum of 250 billion at an intervention fund. Now, the success of the fund is threatened. Now, we must note that the price per metric ton of liquefied petroleum gas in global market went from 386 to 700. Naturally, there will be an effect on the local price. Now, the bigger question is this. If you want to increase duty to discourage importation, that's fine because we saw that happen in the cement sector.
Mhm.
What steps have you taken to encourage or ramp up an increase in local production? And if you're taking those steps, have you publicized them? Now, again, if you had let these guys know right from the time that these are the duties you will be liable to pay, maybe some of them would have opted not to import at all. Now, what is happening now? They're being forced and to scramble and look for the funds to first pay this to first pay for this raised duty note, pending when they can challenge it if they intend to, and they're now passing on the real cost to the consumers. Now, like I said, the global price moved from 386 to $700. That's almost 100% increase. We were already screaming and shouting that as a month ago, we were buying 12.5 kilograms of liquefied petroleum gas for 10,000 naira. That price will go up. Now, juxtapose this and place this on the backdrop of the fact that early next year, the energy subsidies, fuel and power are expected to go. Now, this is a government that continues to suggest and say that they're going to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty. Is this the way they're going to do it?
Okay, we have this message here from Ade. He says, I don't understand this government. We have seven largest gas reserves in the world. Why are we still importing gas? Why can't we fix just one thing now? All right. Next story. Northern region is bleeding. Youth group laments. So on Friday there was a protest by a group of northern youths. Oyemi, I don't know if you saw the story everywhere. And I mean, the protesters were basically lamenting about a gruesome killing over 40 bus passengers at Gidan Bawa village in Sokoto state. Let's
The
see.
North has been bleeding for 20 some years,
And it looks
right?
like they're taking that step
And
now in terms of the protests.
yeah, I'm happy. I wouldn't say happy because there's nothing gladdening about the situation.
Yeah.
These are Nigerians, right? And we must see it that way. But the polity in the north seem to have been supporting or very, very docile in responding. Even during the NSAS protest, we had that divide as well. So is it a good thing that you now have protests in the north? I don't know how effective, because there are reports that some of these protesters were arrested, right? And we're in a situation where protests are no longer um, normal civil rights. There's always a question, about the quality or the right of a citizen to protest that has not yet been answered. And I just want. I know it's a difficult problem. I know that there are a lot of underlying issues, but I want to see progress. We've flogged this issue of how deep the north is in its pain, how people die every day. People are, I mean, and it's already pervading the south, right? It's already pervading the south. I saw some post the other day where someone was giving people tactics on how to travel this Christmas and saying, oh, buy a dot phone, don't put your apps on your phone. When did it get to this? Christmas is supposed to be a time where people reunite with family and travel across borders, but you see everybody taking a different decision because the security situation is actually on red alert. So the north has been bleeding for a long time, but it's good that the noise is also coming or increasing there as well. And I don't think it should be, because the sad thing is that it has now become a divide where people in the south are saying, "Oh, you've been sleeping since now. You've woken up." I don't. We are all citizens of Nigeria. It should be a collaborative effort to bring it to an end. Because if one person is crying, everybody is at risk of tears.
Okay, just very quickly, one sentence. Nigeria is bleeding, not just the north.
Okay, to wrap this up, Oyeyemi, I'll stay with you for this
Okay.
one. Prob missing 10 billion naira NAS 10 billion naira NAS funds. I'll take that again. Prob missing 10 billion naira NAS funds. That's Sarah telling Lawan. Tell us about this.
Lakuni, I don't think we need to sit on this story. It's totally irresponsible that the National Assembly has that kind of issue. And you need Serap to be making noise and crying. Serap has been so busy in the last few days. I've been shouting this thing. And it's because there's just total irresponsibility at different levels of government. We can't be asking the National Assembly that is responsible for assisting, ensuring governance through laws. That's one of the checking points, for ensuring governance. It's irresponsible that a human rights organization is now bringing that to the consciousness of the leadership of the National Assembly and say, "Oh, probe the missing funds." Why are the funds missing at all?
All right, thank you so much. Let's take messages from YouTube. Bola Olaniyo says, please, I would like to confirm if COVID can only be imported into the country via the airports. Who's ensuring that immigrants that come in through our land borders quarantine as expected? And then Baba Femi says, Mr. C is spot on. Our leaders must admit that the demeaning treatment we get internationally is due to their past and present actions. Olaposi says, government would have done a situational analysis of the LPG sector. It was obvious to even the blind that the tax on LPG importers will cause hardship on Nigerians. Olakposi also continues, government should have granted a tax reprieve to the importers and only commence the taxation going forward. Akim, spot on analysis, Mrs. C. Our government do not analyze the impact of their decisions. Same thing. And he proceeds to say, and policies, hence continue to make Nigerian lives more difficult. Quite a shame. Austin says, no need for any protest because election is just around the corner. So I hope we are ready. Mr. C, how would you suggest in terms of what's it called, for the government to do the analysis ahead of some of these decisions, some of these policies that they create? How do you think it's best for the government to actually gather data from the citizens to ensure that they're doing things right by us instead of just making decisions out of?
Okay, so if I was in office,
Okay,
if I was in office,
all right.
I would
Hypothetically speaking.
I would have friends in the private sector. I would reach out to the private sector and feel the pulse. Then I'll have a team in house also feel the pulse. And I will connect. I won't just rely on what I'm being told by paid advisors who believe that it is what they think I want to hear, they will tell me. And I will go out to check the information. I have friends. I would have friends and family before I got into office.
Yeah.
I will pick their brains and ask them, okay, so what do you think? I will think about it. And if it's an area I'm not knowledgeable about, I will get experts I can rely on.
To be honest, Mr. C, I don't even think it's a data problem. The data is there. They have the data in-house, in government. As well.
Don't assume these jokers have the
No,
data.
they do. They do. In most cases, they do.
So who provides this data
So
for them?
they
actually have all this
They
assistance
have.
anyway.
So don't forget that ministries have work. They have like different levels of responsibility, right? And as routine in certain cases, they're going to do these things.
Yeah.
But the problem you raised is it's just a synergy problem. There's a revenue problem. Let's raise money. It's a synergy problem more than a data problem. The data is there.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, our amazing analyst, for this morning's conversation. Please, let's keep the conversation going on social media. Mr. C is at Monsieur C online. You can also find Oyeyemi. She's Oyeyemi _Emmanuel _Aderibigbe. We are at Freshlypressed981, and I'm Lakumi. Thank you so much for joining this segment. Thank you for sending your messages in. Baba Femi, I see you that you're one of the troublemakers. He says I should allow Mr. C use all the words he wants to use to describe the Nigerian government. Okay, right after now, we're going into Lagos Talk Special, and I said at 6 a.m. that we're having a special guest, someone I think that all of us need to be listening to at this time. He is a virologist, and we're going to be talking about the Omicron variant and what Nigeria should be doing. I'm going to be joined by Professor Oyewale Tomori. My name is Lakumi. This is Smooth 98.1. Thank you for joining us.
That your problem that you said, synergy, that thing that you said, is the issue. They have all this data.
Thank you so much.
They always do all these their presentations. Sometimes you have to go and do trainings with NMPC. At least my colleagues in that
Are you stopping
space,
it, Mr. C?
when they're engaging, there's not